Welcome. My name is Analia Pisani from AZ Solutions, and in this 30-minute webinar, I'll take you through some clever PowerPoint visuals. I'll talk about some techniques like spotlighting, morphs, zooming, and dealing with text, animating text. At the end of this session, you'll get a copy of this PowerPoint, some reference notes, and a link to my YouTube. I'll also be following up this session with a virtual 90-minute step-by-step on how these clever PowerPoint visuals have been put together. I also run face-to-face training sessions for groups, so you can get your team, your group together, and I can take you through any of the Microsoft Office suite, so Word, Excel, or PowerPoint. Our sessions are hands-on, step-by-step, and you're able to bring your examples. So get your team together, get your idea of topics that you want to go through and cover. We also offer classes virtually, either full day for your group or also some short 90-minute sessions as well. They're all live, hands-on, step-by-step, and instructed by myself. You can visit my website under tutorials and virtual and have a look at the different sessions that are taking place. If you mention this this session and mention the code, you can get $100 off a group booking. You're able to download a list of shortcut keys. So simply head off to my website under tutorials and you'll see a list of shortcut keys that you can download. If you go to Analia Pisani, I have a YouTube, so just YouTube or Google YouTube Analia Pisani, and you'll get to a whole bunch of presentations. The first session I'll walk you through is spotlighting. So spotlighting is simply having an image there and having a circle in a slightly different color just to accentuate either a person or a thing. So you might have something on the table that you want to bring to people's attention, or maybe a building in the distance, or a particular person. So with this one, the first imagery, just take note that it's actually in color. And then what I've added is added a circle to accentuate a particular person. I've moved that across to the next person to also accentuate that person, noticing that the background image is still in black and white. And then when you wrap up, it comes back to color. This next one is there is no transition, it simply appears, so you simply have a slide and then the next slide, the next slide, the next slide appearing. So when we do this, we have the shapes appearing in the middle. By the time you get to the second slide, it drops down, so it simply appears. There's no motion of it moving, it's simply appearing, but a little bit further down. Then we have the shape of the baby that appears, and it then appears onto the next circle for toddler, preschooler, and adult. So it's simply appearing. So this is multiple slides and then simply taking away the other objects to focus on the one you want at that particular time. Now we can enhance and improve this same method or same outcome, I guess, by using the feature for Morph. Now, the feature for Morph, if I had to do this manually without the Morph, then it would be using the motion path feature. So it's where you draw a line from one point to another, making the object move in that direction. It's a lot more work because you have to do this for each individual item. So Morph is really good, but what you do also have to understand is Morph is available in the latest version of Microsoft Office, so Office 365, 2016, 2013, and you might need to check, but definitely 2007, 2010, it may not be there, so just keep an eye out for that. So I'm starting with the objects up the top, and I've used the Morphs feature this time. And what it's done, it's giving it the motion, the feeling of movement. So it's moving down. It's then going to show me the baby. So you saw how it sort of appeared in the fade. And now it's transitioning or moving across to the next. This first instance is going to be with no morph. So we have a room, and the idea is that you want to focus on the pillows and then on the table. The way you normally initially would do it is simply create one slide, then the next, the next, and the next. So here for the first one, you'll see how the picture has been cropped to focus a little bit more on the cushion, and then the next slide focuses on the cushion even further. And the next slide simply has now the table, and then back out again. By using morphs with those exact same slides, appears we're looking at the whole picture, but see how it creates that movement, that zooming effect of coming closer and then coming in closer again onto the cushion, and then onto the table. So this is with the morph effect, as opposed to having to do it with the motion path. On that one would be a little bit harder. Now with morphs, you actually have, so that one was with the whole object or slide, whereas we can also do morph where it pulls individual characters. So it looks at what's different from the previous slide to this current slide, and then I can pull it apart with characters. So in this one we have the question of using the format painter. Should I single click or should I double click? Now the format painter is a feature that is available across all of your Microsoft Office suite. So it's available across PowerPoint, Word, Excel, even in Outlook. The job of the format painter is to say, right, I've got a piece of text, I've changed the font size and color, and now I need to apply all of that formatting again and again and again to other bits of text. Now, a lot of people say, yep, don't worry, I've used the format painter, I know how to use this one, but they're using the single click as opposed to the double click. When you select your piece of text and then double click on the format painter, you're then able to apply again and again and again that formatting to multiple bits of text. So the way we've done this one is the letters, the characters have come together to join or to form the word. We can do this by words rather than characters. Same question. This time round, we'll be taking the word single and double and then bringing it together. Okay. We'll take a look at the slight changes from one slide to the next. So in this one, I've got an Excel icon sitting in the background. I've got three shapes and they're overlapped at the moment. So I've got Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. And when I do the morphs, it takes a look at these as I move them into the next slide. So talking about formulas and functions, again, so as I move along, the if function, the most popular functions is the if function, then the VLOOKUP, and now there is a new function that is much better than the VLOOKUP, which is called the XLOOKUP. You can check out my YouTube channel on VLOOKUP, which will take you through the VLOOKUP and the XLOOKUP as well. just YouTube Analia Pisani and you'll get to it. Another, I guess, method, way, why, when would you use these morphs? If you want to express some statistics, so maybe you could have a map of the world and then, narrow down to maybe just Australia and then down to your statistics, for example. So here I've got a map of Australia, and then I'm focusing on, maybe the statistics, how we've improved in sales of, I don't know, homes or whatever your product might be. And noticing how it moves off up to Queensland and then across to South Australia and then finally to Western Australia. This example is, I've got two shapes, two slides. So this is the first slide and the next slide is an icon of just Excel. And the morphs feature is turned on this one. So when you go to the next one, it sort of does like the fade, the appear method. But you can do this with shapes. So if you can imagine that you have a square and a circle, and you want that to transform from a square to a circle. Now, in order to do that, there is a little bit of work. You will need to change the name of that shape, and you will need to add 2 exclamation marks in front of that name, and you will need to make that name the same in both the slides. So one's a square, one's a circle. You're going to call it shape. So what you're going to do is do exclamation mark shape on the square slide and replicate the same. So when you get to the circle, exclamation mark shape. So give them both the same name, and this will merge the shape. So it's like changing from a face to then scenery in the background. So the merge between those. So let's take a look at that. So again, you have the major shape here. So this is going to resize itself, if you like, to the next shape. See how it's changed? Now let's go back to the design that we had earlier. So this is the first one. And you can see that it just simply appears. So from here, it now does a bit of the fade and appears. And the difference with this one is you can see the edges of this shape sort of squeezing in and moving into this one. So with this one, using the focus, so we're focusing on the chair, and then we're focusing on a close-up of that chair and magazine, and then finally onto the magazine. Now, we can use the zoom tool to do this. Now, when you do this, you're going to be getting a replica of the slide, so a thumbnail view of the slide that will be appearing on your major slide as well, that you'll have to click to get into it. So here we have your major slide, and here you have the thumbnail views of the other slides that you want to get into. So now when I click on this one here, it will take me into that slide, and I've just cropped it to make it focus on that particular area that I wanted. Now when I click again in the slide, it now moves across to the next slide, and then back to this main one here. Now, let me go back and back. The way I've decided to make this is to come in from here and jump to this next one and then go to the next slide. But you can actually change the order of this so that I can click and talk about this area and then come back to this main one, talk about this one, and then come back to this one. So with the zoom technique, you can change the order around. You can also create sections. Now, you'll need to create your PowerPoint. So if you've got 60 slides, 100 slides, it's a great tool to use sections so that you can then zoom into that section. So maybe you have a section about cost, or maybe you have a section about the renovation component. So what you can do is zoom in and then flick through those handful of slides, and then zoom into the cost section and then flick through that handful of slides and then come back to your main one. So let's take a look at a scenario here. So I've got the baby stages here and a thumbnail view up the top. So this thumbnail view up the top is made up of several slides. So when I click on it, it will then take me to that slide and then take me to the next slide, and then back out. The bit that you need to, I guess, be cautious of or aware of when you're navigating through this Zoom is where you're actually clicking when you want to move on to the next major slide. So when you want to move on to the next major slide, make sure you're in the main slide when you click, as opposed to accidentally clicking up the top here. So I'm now going to move on to the next one. So we were talking about the primary school years. So when I click in this one here, it takes me inside that slide and then runs me through those slides there, and then back out. So the last stage is the teenage years, and again, clicking in to zoom into that set number of slides. What you need to watch out for when you're constructing the zooming in and zooming out is that you then remember to hide the slides that are in that group, because you don't need to look at those individually. So remember to hide them. Otherwise, as you can see here, next time you click, you're going to be moving into it. Okay, so remember to hide all of those ones. Okay. This zoom here is where, rather than having another slide here to say this is what my answer is, I've masked it by giving it a shape. So when you click on the zoom option here, it'll take me to this slide, and then I can come back out, discuss and say, should we be clicking once, or should we be clicking twice? Which do you think? And the answer will now be revealed, and then it zooms into the answer. A lot of people have used the fly in from the top, from below, from above, from all different directions. It's one that we tend to use quite a lot, but flying in with a particular order. So in this one here, I've got an object, a shape with a triangle that has been merged, and then the number that's been added. So that shape comes in with the first bullet point. So rather than just having a bullet point and another bullet point and another bullet point, creating a little bit of animation with that. And also having that fade, so the shape or the text then comes in and appears. Now, what you can also do and add to this is you can create a hyperlink to each of these. So maybe you're in here and you then want to discuss some of these points in more detail. Instead of then having to flick through to get to that slide, you can set some hyperlinks. So we have it coming in and have the bullet point come in. So it's just the same as the one before. The only thing that we've added or changed here is that now that the numbers are associated with a hyperlink. So you notice that because I've got the little hand that's coming up. So you could get to this point and then say, right, rather than talking about PowerPoint, then Excel, and then Word, you can change it so that you can be a bit more flexible, a bit more dynamic with the group and ask them, what do you want to talk about next? Did you want to talk about Excel or did you want to talk about Word? Now, let's say if they want to talk about Excel, then you would click on the hyperlink for 2, and it will then take you to the slide where it'll talk about an Excel concept. Now, the Excel concept that we're going to talk about here is the format as table feature, which people totally overlook. This feature in Excel, people sometimes simply see the color option and think, right, this is about applying color to every second row, but it's so much more. Instead of having to select the block of data and then turn on the sort and filter, this will do it automatically for you. When you're dealing with a list, you want to use this format as table feature. As you scroll down and down and down, you tend to lose your header up the top. So what's nice and handy to do is to turn on the freeze pane feature. Now, my favourite part is the grows with you. I call it grows with you. What that does is, imagine you want to create a graph. So in that graph, you've got in the Excel spreadsheet part, you've got apples, pears, oranges going down, January, February and March going across, and then a bunch of figures in the middle. You select this, you press F11 and it creates the graph. Now, that's not the amazing part. The amazing part is that because you've used the format as table here, if you then wanted to add April, you simply type in April in the next column and it will include it in the graph for you. You can also use the format as table when you're dealing with pivot tables, because as you add more data in your raw data of the pivot table, you don't have to constantly go back to your pivot table and ask it to reset the data and include extra rows. It will do it for you because you have set this format as table feature. When you're dealing with lists, the last thing is total rows. So along the bottom row, sometimes what people want to have is the sum of what's happening of that column, or maybe a count. By just ticking a box, it will give you that functionality at the bottom row. That's what's nice about this format as table feature. I also have a YouTube on this, so if you YouTube Annalia Pisani, you'll get to my YouTube channel and then have a look for format as table and you'll get to see some more information about this one. Now, once you finish discussing this topic, what you want to do is go back to that main slide that had those 3 bullet points. What I've done here along the bottom here is I've created a rectangle or a shape in there and made it blend in with the background and created a hyperlink that will take me back to that point. Now, I could have created a shape and let everybody see it. That's also something that you can do. You'll notice that if I go to the top right-hand corner, you're not going to see that hand icon. If I go to the top left, you're not going to see that hand icon. So it's only at that bottom right. So when you click on it, it's then going to go off and actually take you back to that page where you can talk and discuss with your group, the next point that you want to talk about. Let's say maybe we now want to talk about the PowerPoint. So when I click on the link up here, it now takes me to that slide and we can talk about adding sections. So sections are great and important. If you want to use that zooming component that I just discussed earlier, you're going to need to create sections. If you're working with large slides, 60, 100 slides, you can group them into sections, which is going to make it easier for your co-workers to then go back and modify a particular section. It's also easy to rearrange and then delete, if you need to, a whole section. So you might be talking about cost, and that could be 6 to 10 slides. Very easily you can rearrange them and talk about it at the bottom of the presentation, or you can select them and delete that section and all of the slides in there. So working with sections is quite good. I also have a YouTube on that one that you can go off and have a look at if you like. On the bottom right, again, once we're done talking about this one, we can click on it and it'll take you back to that main point again. And then we can talk about the final option, which is Word. So the final one here, which is option number 3, creating a hyperlink, takes you to that page. There's some features in Word that are totally underutilized. And some of these features you may not have it unless you have Office 365, so keep that in mind as well. But one of the features is reuse files. There's a dictate where you can just talk and it will type everything in there for you. The immersive reader is pretty handy when you want to focus on just one line at a time, or break it down into syllables, or go into the draw table. So these are some really nice features in Word. So again, on the bottom corner, I've created a hyperlink that will take me back to this main one. Animating text, using that fly-in technique, often people, yes, can animate the text, but they have the main bullet point and all the sub-bullets come in all in one hit. And what's really nice is if you want to keep your audience a bit more engaged, keep them following you and sticking with you, I guess, what you can do is animate it separately. So in this instance, what I have is a question here. What is the shortcut key to creating a graph in Excel? Now, when I click here, you'll notice that the question becomes in a lighter color so that it doesn't overpower and you're focusing on what the answer is. It does keep it there on screen, which allows you to keep on thinking of what did I just finish saying, and keep yourself as a trainer on track as to what you've got to say next. Now, when I click on the next one here, it says, how do you create a show for multiple audiences? Now, in this one, what I've had people do is they duplicate the same presentation again and again and again, and then delete the bits and pieces that they don't need, which can be quite problematic when you have same slides across all of these different presentations that have now updated and changed, and you've got to go to all of them and update and change it. So that's a bit of a nightmare. So there is a much easier way of doing this. Also, you might create one PowerPoint and choose to hide and unhide slides. Now that's okay if you've got 1 or 2 slides that you need to hide, but if you've got quite a lot of slides that you need to hide for 3 or 4 different audiences, that gets very problematic. So what you can use instead is a feature called Custom Show. You can create, or can you create, multiple animations on one object. So you have one object and you want to make it come in from the left, then enlarge, and then drop down from the bottom. The answer to that question is yes, you can. So you can animate multiple. Now, the technique that I've used here, you can still see the questions and the answers sitting in the background there, which can also still distract some people. So if you feel you need more control, you can do this. You're still doing the animation effect of flying in, but you're then asking it to hide after it animates. So this time round, we have our question, what is the shortcut key to create a graph in Excel? And when we're ready to give out that answer, you'll see that the total focus is on the answer. The question has now disappeared and you're totally focused on whatever the answer is. When you're ready to move on and talk and discuss the next one, how do you create a show for multiple audiences? Again, once you're ready and you click, that one disappears and then the answer is displayed. Keeping the attention of your audience as you move forward, rather than have them read behind you and constantly looking at something else and not focusing on the next step. Can you create multiple animations on one object? The answer to that is yes, you can. Thank you for joining me in this session. Remember to check out my YouTube channel, Analia Pisani, for some more information, or shoot off to my website under tutorials for webinars and virtual sessions.